Hey guys, Lori here, pharmacist. I just wanted to say thank you so much for all of you who jumped on and prayed with me. You know, it was so weird. The quality of that video turned out so poorly, and I could not figure out why other than it was the enemy, because I've made other lives before and the quality was fine. But anyway, I just wanted to apologize for that. Not that it was my fault, but that's why this one's not alive, because I got some things I want to say. And one person suggested that we do a daily prayer thing based on the 7. Of course, it wouldn't be so long, and I'm going to do that, but I'm going to do it in another room that's closer to my modem in case that was the issue with why the live turned out so blurry and kind of sketchy last night. All right, so what do I want to talk to you about today? I want to talk to you about my theory of what's going on with COVID-19 and where this might have come from and why. I'm also going to talk to you about, after listening to so many videos and so many different theories, I'm going to just be honest with you about what I agree with, what I don't agree with as a healthcare professional. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just going to throw out, my differences of opinion and why. I'm going to start out this with a story though. I've been, cultivating this video all day, writing down, taking in information and that kind of stuff. But just a little while ago, my soon-to-be son-in-law, I look out the window and his truck is parked on the side of the road. I live on a 2-lane highway. And he's got the hood up and he's underneath the vehicle. And the thing is, he just got the vehicle. He trades cars. It's something he does on the side, and he's really good at it, right? And so he'll drive a vehicle and then he'll have it, and then he'll turn around and sell it and make a little money and buy another vehicle. So this was a fairly new vehicle that he just got a few days ago. And I'm like, oh man, that's a bummer. And so I walked out to say hey and say, is there anything I can do? And I said, so just quit on you, huh? And he's like, yeah, just out of the blue, just shut off. He said, so I made it to here. And I'm like, okay. And I said, well, any clue it could be wrong? And he's like, nope. I could tell he was really miffed, right? And I'm like, just shut off, huh? Has it given you any trouble, before? I mean, the last few days? Nope. Been driving fine. Everything's good. And all went out of the blue. I said, well, how much gas does it have in it? And he goes, oh, it's got a half a tank. I said, well, that's what it says. He looked at me and kind of looked off. I could hear the wheels turning. And he was having a friend come pick him up, right? And he was going to tow the truck home. And he said, I'm going to call my friend and tell him to bring me some gas. I said, I think that's a good idea. Sure enough, put gas in it, drove off. And as I'm thinking about that whole scenario, I thought, isn't it ironic how sometimes the simplest thing is the answer, and sometimes the answer is right in front of your face. And a little while later, I got a text from him thanking me that he was so glad he broke down in front of my house because he was ready to light a match to the thing and claim insurance on it. He was like, I was so miffed. And I said, well, I'm glad I could be the voice of reason. But you know what I'm saying? So I thought about, how does that apply, Lord? Because I know, walking with God, that he is not a God of coincidences. I mean, you don't read in the Bible where Jesus was walking down the road and coincidentally he ran into whoever. As a matter of fact, the Bible says the steps of a righteous man are ordered by God. So God is a God of purpose, and that's the way he operates. So back to COVID-19, I thought, what is it we're missing with all the theories out there, with all the, all what's going on? What are we missing? So first of all, I want to talk to you about what I believe about 5G. I'm not an advocate of 5G. I'm not an expert on 5G. I'm not, I think 5G, well, it's never been tested. It's the old say no more. So I'm not into 5G, but I personally do not believe that 5G is the cause of the coronavirus, because, and I felt the need to say this after I'd signed on and started listening to somebody on this topic, and I'm not going to name who, but the statement they made, I thought that was absolutely ludicrous. And because they were saying how 5G, I don't know, kind of causing this and all. And I thought, but wait a minute, this is showing up in places where 5G has not even been rolled out. Hence, right here where I live, right in my neck of the woods, I know of someone personally, or not, not close friend, but I know of this person who ended up in the hospital and, almost died of COVID-19, is still there and is in ICU, or was. I don't know if they've been moved out yet. We haven't rolled out 5G here, okay? In addition, their spouse contracted it. So, but the spouse wasn't nearly as bad off. So, all right, that's what I'm going to say about 5G. Not that I'm an advocate, but I'm not going to sign up for 5G as causing this. Second of all, we've been listening to how viruses are not contagious. There are some people that are posting videos about that. I've really thought about that. I was kind of on that bandwagon actually earlier today, but then the more I thought about chickenpox and measles being viral and how the vaccine sheds, and they warn if you've had a live vaccine not to go visit immunocompromised people. I'm not here saying 100% that viruses are not contagious, but I just kind of don't see how they cannot be contagious, especially in light of chickenpox parties, measles parties, that kind of thing. If somebody else has got a better explanation out there, I'm all ears, but that's where I'm coming from. Okay, so what do we know about COVID-19? We know it spread quickly. We know it spread globally, right? We know it is among the immunocompromised, people with underlying conditions, although it has affected quote unquote healthy people. Now, in reading articles and being a healthcare professional, and I'm going to do another video about this a little bit later, one thing I can tell you about the term healthy in America is it is very, very broad and unreliable. So just because you read in an article that someone is healthy, trust me, you cannot go by that by any stretch of the imagination. But anyway, I almost need a light. I've been trying to make this video all day and it's like, it's just been one thing after the other. What else? Oh, and Washington State is where it started here in America. It started January 20th in a long-term care facility with what's the issue with that? Well, you've got the most immunocompromised people, at least in America, in long-term care facilities, nursing homes. They are, and I know this personally. I worked as a pharmacist that serviced nursing homes. The last job I worked, we were counseling people sometimes that were in long-term care facilities. Their drug lists are every bit as long or twice as long as anybody else's. They've got those poor people on more drugs than you can imagine. Their diet is horrible. They give them things that they call food, like Ensure, which is just absolutely disgusting. And they are vaxxed to the hilt. So you're dealing with a really immunocompromised bunch. And yet that is where this started in America, right? And then it spread conveniently kind of everywhere. If you followed me back in the summer through early fall, I was actually in a fairly heated discussion back and forth with a doctor, infectious disease doctor locally here, who majorly drank the Kool-Aid, and we were going back and forth on the whole vaccines and that type of stuff, and during which time the man called me about everything but a child of God. So this person, interestingly, I hadn't talked to him since October because I signed off. I did all I could do, and then I said, I don't have any more time, okay? And I hadn't heard from him. Well, they got an email last week, and it basically was giving me a graph on the COVID thing. And the interesting thing was it was pointing out how the massive recovery rate, right? So I thought, well, I started shooting him information. Well, I didn't take very long before he got furious at me for a video that I sent him. And a lot of the times when I send out a video, I mean, most of the time, it's not that I agree 100% with everything in the video by any stretch of the imagination, but a lot of times it has some really valid points. And that's why I share it, because I'm like, this has got some points and I want you guys to look at it, right? I don't sit there and go over what I agree with, what I don't. It just would take too long. And for some things, for me, the jury's still out, frankly. But I feel like it's good information and it's something that should be researched and looked at. Well, this particular one was about, is COVID-19 real, and the unreliability of the test. So he accused me of spreading fake news, even though I didn't necessarily agree with the whole video, but then went on to say that the tests are absolutely reliable and they are testing for mRNA and 3 different strains, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, great. Well, I'd like to see your sources for where you're getting this information. I just want to see it with my own eyes. Oh, I don't have time. I don't have time to play your game. And I'm like, which is doctor code for didn't have a source. I don't know. So we went back and forth, but finally he gave it up. And it turned out, sends me this link, which I can post and you guys can look at, laboratory testing for coronavirus 2019, COVID-19 in suspected human cases. Well, first red flag was, it was out of the yours truly World Health Organization. Second red flag, dated March the 2nd, 2020. Again, the original first case in the U.S. anyway was January 20th. So about a month, almost a month and a half late to the party. I have not gotten back with him on this. He's not speaking to me right now. Okay. But as I'm looking at this article, because I printed it out, I realized the emblem, and I've never noticed this before, and I don't know, maybe you have, maybe you haven't, but I think it is really flippin' stinking relative to everything that's going on. Speaking of right in front of your face, the emblem is of the World Health Organization is a serpent wrapped around a staff. And if you look at in the US, this emblem for the medical community here is 2 serpents wrapped around a staff going in like opposite directions or whatever. What are we learning about the Illuminati and all the symbolism with the child pedophilia, child sex trafficking, things that my eyes are being opened to hugely, and mind blown over it. What shall I say? What is right in our what is right in front of our face that we haven't seen because we're not trained to look that way? And then I look at the symbol of the World Health Organization and I'm like, yeah, these are the people, Satan, the serpent, thank you, that are making our decisions. Anyway, when I did go through the article, which was of course very complicated, and I don't know, it's amazing the crafty language they use to make it seem like they so know what they're doing, but when you start to read the fine print, you realize they don't. And they talk about false positives, false negatives. I really loved this statement. This was classic. Viral shedding patterns are not yet well understood, and further investigations are needed to better understand the timing, compartmentalization, and quantity of viral shedding to inform optimal specimen collection. So in other words, y'all don't know enough to know if your specimens are actually reliable. You said it right there. It took you a really long time to say it, but there it is. I mean, give me a flipping break. It's like 10 pages long. I only printed out 2. But they go on, they don't know. But this is what we are basing our lives on. This is what we're basing our children's lives on. What the people with the serpent around the staff are telling us. Okay? So please, people, wake people up. We need to alert the world to what is really going on and who is in control and who is deciding that we need whatever we need, but especially things that are being injected into our bloodstream. All right, what else? Oh, chloroquine and azithromycin. Okay, so I posted earlier today about this. You know, it looks like, and I haven't watched the press conference, but it looks like Anthony Fauci and all of the bunch is having kittens because Trump keeps recommending chloroquine and azithromycin, right? And yet I've done some research from pharmacist friends, or acquaintances, not true friends. There's a pharmacist that I follow. He makes YouTube videos. Can you talk? He makes YouTube videos. He's on LinkedIn. I kind of, through the grapevine, we became acquaintances. Now he is all in with the medical system, right? He's young out of school, nice guy, a young family, and praying for him to wake up because he's got little kids and he is all about the vaccination program. But anyway, he, curiously enough, last week posted a video about chloroquine, azithromycin, and then versus HIV antiviral drugs with the COVID-19. And I'm like, this is going to be interesting. Let me hear what Mr. Clinical Pharmacology King has to say about all this. Well, come to find out, he went on to say that the chloroquine and azithromycin, and he's done the dirty work, is showing really promising signs. And that the HIV drugs, which, by the way, have the side effects straight from hell. If somebody said, we're going to put you on HIV drugs, Lori, or would you rather get shot? I'll take the gunshot, okay, and go that way. That's just what I'm saying. They're horrible drugs. His point was they're not showing as promising effects, but they're going to continue to do research. And I'm thinking, well, of course you are, because it's going to make so much more money for pharma if we can convince the world they need those drugs. But I'm like, why are you going to give people drugs that have horrible side effects when you have drugs that have been on the market for a multitude of years, chloroquine for forever, and have relatively mild to no side effects, and we know the track record? Why is Fauci and the whole bunch having kittens? Because pharma cannot make money. And yet, and this is where, you know, again, I've been in the system. I've seen this pattern. You know, we don't want an answer that we can't make money at. We want an answer that's new and improved, like a vaccine or a new drug. Either one of those would be great for pharma and they would be thrilled with. But what got me to thinking too was, who figured out the chloroquine azithromycin combination? And if somebody out there knows the answer to that question, could you please send it my way? Because knowing what I know, and that I personally believe that this is a virus that's been created in a lab. This is a planned pandemic. That's what I believe. It's my opinion. And why? Because, you know, it's the perfect thing to tank Trump and to ruin his reelection and to tank the economy and convince us once again we need this healthcare system. They are the savior of the world, which is they've convinced us for all these years, you know, eons now. So, but who actually is the person that figured this out? Could we have his name or her name or their names or the company? Because it points to me to somehow, and this kind of goes back to the white hat, black hat thing, which is, I know, a QAnon, whatever terminology, and I'm not saying, I mean, I believe Q's a person, but whether, you know, trust the plan and all that, jury's still out for me on that, eyes wide open. But if this was a planned pandemic and the white hats knew, then that means they already had access to this virus. So maybe somebody behind the scenes was figuring out what could cure it so they could bring it on board. I don't know. It's just a thought. But I thought, if anybody out there knows who, because this is the thing, when it comes to viruses, at least in my history as a pharmacist, I've never heard of an anti-malarial being used to treat viruses. Now, I have not done extensive research. Don't take that as thus saith the Lord. Or thus saith Lori either, but I've just never seen it. Doesn't mean it hadn't happened. And I'm thinking, well, if chloroquine and azithromycin, which interesting, that's an antibiotic, which begs another question. Why is an antibiotic working on a virus? But if that combination works, then would it not make sense to try it out for influenza A and B and some other viruses out there instead of using Tamiflu and some of the harder and antivirals like that have horrible side effects, potentially cardiac arrhythmias, death, it affects your psyche. I would never recommend anybody on the planet take Tamiflu. Just say it. Wouldn't it make sense because I'm trying to understand the mechanism of action, which is another thing, chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine. If you look up the mechanism of action, they don't know. They don't know why it helps lupus. They don't know why it helps rheumatoid arthritis. They don't know. And I love this. This evidence-based medicine is based on evidence of we don't know why it works, but it works, which is really something that bugged me in pharmacy school because I don't know. They're just so all-knowing, and yet they don't know how it works or why it works. I mean, they might know how, but they don't know why. It's bizarre. Okay, what else? Okay, so I'm going to come up with my theory. This is my theory, and it comes down to the flu shot. It occurred to me today, if you're going to spread something and be sure that it's global, why don't you taint something, not all lots, but some lots, not all companies, but maybe one or two companies with whatever it is you're going to infect. And then you're going to ensure that it is spread globally and it is spread quickly. Because we're told this started in Wuhan, but they needed this virus to spread quickly, right? They needed some guarantee. So if it's made in a lab and they've already worked with it, they understand how it works. And how many people now, another point, have said, and I talked to one today via Messenger, we think we had COVID back there, back in January, back in October, back in whenever. Is there part of this that's bacterial? And so that's contributing to the spread. I don't know. I'm just saying, if you were going to ensure that something spread globally at a pretty quick clip, wouldn't it be best to just inject people across the world with it? And then it's going to show up. And if it's contagious, it's going to spread, right? I don't know. That's what I'm throwing out there. It seems like the simplest answer to me. It's also curious. Some people get it. The wife gets it. The husband does it, and vice versa. In the case of the people I know, both of the couples, the husband and wife got it. But as far as I know, the kids didn't get it, which is another thing. This is not seeming to affect children very much. And they say, well, it is affecting them. Well, there's so much. And then the CDC puts that things are presumed positive. So you're presuming it's positive and you're reporting those numbers on presumption. It's another huge red flag. A lot of different things to think about, people. But I just wanted to let you know where I stood. I'm looking at my notes to see if there's anything else. The person that I talked to, initially, she'd gotten the flu shot last fall and got the flu, had messaged me a while back to let me know. I said, well, I'm not shocked. Turns out now they think her husband had COVID-19 back in January. He got the flu shot too. And by the symptoms, of course, we weren't looking for COVID-19 at the beginning of January, so it wasn't even on the radar, right? But once we put it on the radar, then suddenly everybody is getting, or not everybody, but we're all these cases, it's spreading like wildfire. We've got tests that are completely unreliable. The specimens are unreliable. I was also talking to a nurse today that is involved in all the testing, and this is what kind of kicked this off for me. That was this morning, about just the incredible way they're doing the tests and where the tests are being sent. And one will test positive at one hospital or negative at one hospital and positive at another. And there's so much going on. So I'm that person that doesn't know everything by any stretch of the imagination, but I am in the trenches with the people, and that's where I've always been. That's where I love being, listening to what they have to say, and this is what I'm hearing. So I'm drawing my own conclusions, and I think the fact that they could have injected the whole world with a no-cost flu shot. Another interesting point, Russia's numbers are incredibly low. I started looking up flu shot vaccination uptake in Russia. Well, the Russians aren't even fond of vaccinating. It's actually in vogue there, from the article I read, to not vaccinate. I thought, wow, a country on the planet that can think. That's really encouraging, So I'm guessing if they're not vaccinating their kids too much, they're probably not jumping out there for the flu shot. Just food for thought, guys. Okay, I think that about covers it. Love you guys. I am, like I said, thinking about getting on and doing a prayer. Might just jump on later and do a live and do that. Keeping it short, but just consistent, that, God has got this. And regardless of what is true and what is not regarding all the different theories, we do know who we can trust. And that is the creator of the universe, the author of the Holy Bible, Jesus Christ. He is our rock. He is our fortress. He is our deliverer. In him will we trust. In him I trust. And that's why I'm not worried about any of this. And I know that God is going to expose the truth, because that's what he does. And we've had so many people now for so many years speaking truth. And I believe the fruit of what the seeds we've planted is going to come to fruition. And I want to tell you something else right before I sign off here that I felt like the Lord showed me. Because of the incredible awareness I have seen just everywhere I look, I said the ship is sinking. The pharma ship is sinking. And this is my prayer. The pharma ship is sinking, and the pandemic is the iceberg it hit. And the very thing that they thought would never sink their ship, that would be the ace in their hole, is going to be the very thing that takes them down. So I am praying that. I am believing for that in the name of Jesus. And I'm asking you all to join with me and pray for that. The truth will be known. The truth is going to be revealed. The truth sets us free. All right. Love you guys. If you want to contact me, Thewisepharmacist@gmail.com. I'm glad to work with you. Had a wonderful conversation. I'll tell you more in another video. This is going long with a young man today, and it was really encouraging. And he told me some exciting things I want to share with you guys. So, or thewisepharmacist.com, ask the pharmacist, shoots me an email. I'll be glad to talk to you, whatever. If you've got questions about vaccines, drugs, whatever. All right. Love you guys, and talk soon.